Hey, I'm Dawn Marie Solis with INNIS 2022 Neurodiversity Conference, and I am here with Star Peterson, who I'm very excited about. Star does amazing work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and part of what I'm so excited about is that she helps companies understand the LGBTQI plus community, of which I am a member, and I have family members and friends, and I just kind of soak in that tea, wonderful community. And she does neurodivergence work as well. So Star is becoming quickly somebody I am a huge fan of. So I'm thrilled to have her as part of the conference, and I can't wait to have this conversation. And Star, please tell everybody who you are and what you're about.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm Star Peterson. I use they, them pronouns. I have a master's in severe disability special education. I taught for 15 years before becoming an instructional designer and a diversity trainer. My specialty in diversity training is helping people be more accommodating to the LGBTQIA plus community and helping workplaces better accommodate their neurodiverse employees.
That's awesome. And so Star and I literally just talked about this before I hit the record button, that I am brain-addled today, and that my connection to pronouns is really bad today, and I already misgendered them. So apologies right out of the gate. Oh my goodness. So here we go. I'm going to try to do better. I am sorry. But, you know, INNIS is all about being our real human selves. So hopefully my humanness is okay on display. But I am very sorry. I take gendering very important. I refer to, very seriously, I refer to myself as gender rejecting. I do use she, her as my pronouns, in part because in the moment with my ADHD and the way my brain processes, I struggle. I struggle to process in the moment, right? When I can slow down and be careful, I'm very conscious and I remember. But when my brain is like 90 miles an hour, I wouldn't even remember for myself what my pronouns are. So, I haven't enjoyed gender for as long as I can remember. I had an argument with my mom when I was little. My first memory of gender style things was being taught, these are your privates, nobody can touch them, don't talk about them. And then a follow-up memory of learning pronouns, and then coming to my mom and going, but I thought we weren't supposed to talk about our private parts. And the conversation going something like, well, you're not. Well, then why do we say she, her, he, him? That's talking about your private parts. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Why can't I say they, them? Because that's plural. No, it's not, because I can point to a single person over there and say they or them.
Right.
Well, yes, but that's different. No, it's not. Right. And so my tiny self, my like 3 or 4-year-old self, saw all the conundrums and contradictions and didn't like them, and how nobody understood I was autistic is beyond me. But I didn't like it from my earliest memories of starting to realize there were these divisions, and it all had to do with people understanding what was under my clothes. And I didn't want that to be anybody's business, and I found it creepy and icky, and I still do. So the fact that I can lose track of that is super unfortunate, and something I just have to continue to humbly deal with and ask for constant patience and grace and forgiveness. But it is something I feel is exceptionally important, and I hope we find something that works a little bit better, like something that isn't such a societal argument,
Right.
you know, like the proper grammar thing. How do you, when you try to talk to your corporate clients, how do you help people really stridently committed to it's proper grammar, right? How do you help people break that mindset of grammar and rules and embrace the people are allowed to gender themselves however they want to?
Well, for one thing, you can look pretty far back in the English language, even to Shakespearean times, and find they use singularly. But to me, that doesn't matter because language evolves, right? We didn't have the word meme 20 years ago. Does that mean no one can use the word speaking the same English that British English that the original colonists speak? Of course we're not. So language is meant to grow. We're human. We have a better understanding of things, or we have new things in our lives so language just is supposed to be fluid like that. It's not supposed to be these set rules and you never step outside. Then I couldn't say iPhone if we were only going to use words that have been around, for 50 years.
That's a great way to put it. I know I've been in conversations where I've used a similar analogy, and people have said to me, well, grammar is different, right? Of course, we say iPhone because an iPhone didn't exist,
Right.
but grammar is different. We use the same grammar today as we did 50 years ago. And this is a grammar conversation, not a new word. So if you want to have a different gender word, make up a new word.
Right.
Don't hijack the grammar.
And honestly, I mean, some people use neopronouns and that's what feels right to them. But I feel like maybe this is more common among us autistics. But I just see grammar as silly rules. Like there's a lot of things in the world. Why is there a rule that a man shouldn't wear a dress? Why is there a rule that there shouldn't be dandelions in my grass? I feel the same way about grammar. If you understand what I'm saying, that's what matters. And honestly, I feel like grammar gets used in a really classist way a lot for people who have not had the access to the kind of education you and I have because of, perhaps geography or having underfunded schools. So to me, it's just a silly rule. I don't care. If you understand me, my point is being served. I don't think people realize how much they use they, them pronouns when they don't know someone's gender. For example, a teacher might say, all right, everyone get their lunchbox, we're gonna line up. Or if I find a cell phone and there's no one around, I might pick it up and say, hey, did anyone lose their cell phone? So we do actually use it for strangers when we don't have a person to look at to try to guess their gender. And so it is already in use. I just tell people to practice. I mess up myself all the time. I have to correct myself all the time. A colleague of mine looked at the research, and apparently it's a different part of our brain that processes they, them pronouns versus she, her, and he, him. And I think the fact that in our society, we're steeped, from before someone's born, we're trying to determine their gender before they can even tell us their gender, right? Based on their genitals. Clothes are divided, bathrooms are divided. I think, you can't be steeped in that for decades and then just expect our brains to just automatically, be able to stop looking at someone being like, okay, beard, he, okay, dress, she.
Yeah, and it does really terrible things to people who don't physiologically fit the binary. So I have friends who have vaginas but produce more testosterone than is the average for vagina owning humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have fewer or no periods. They grow facial hair. They may have a bit more body hair in places that aren't culturally standard for people who own vaginas. And they feel really badly about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
This is just ridiculous. That's just absolutely absurd. They should be able to feel really comfortable and good and attractive and all of those things about themselves, regardless of any of it. And to feel that there's only one standard of not only beauty, but human acceptableness goes really, really badly. But also because our education system only teaches the binary, we are absolutely ignorant about all of the other humans that exist. We have many, many humans with both genitalia.
Yeah.
We don't have words for them. What are
Well,
they supposed to do, right?
right.
We have several different kinds of not only humans, but other living creatures, right? When we don't talk about it, we only talk about the binary. And so we're leaving out an entire section of natural existence, not freakish existence, not disabled existence, not any of these othered things, right? Not these ways of presenting things as though they're like huge mistakes in nature. But no, actually they're natural. They happen enough that they're actually natural. They're part of the way we exist. And we have culturally removed them from the idea of nature. And what are we doing to those human beings?
Right. Well, and intersex people are as common as people who have red hair. If you look at the percentages, a lot of people don't even realize they're intersex until they try to have kids, because when a baby is born, we guess their so-called biological sex based on external genitalia. We're not doing an ultrasound to see if there is in fact a uterus and not gonads inside. We're not doing chromosomal testing. We're not doing hormonal testing. So yeah, I think I like you talking about it just being a normal, natural variation, because I feel like that's true with brains too. It's not like autism is wrong, ADHD is wrong. There's just there's diversity. And our society likes to pick one thing that's right. Like, this is the right quiet, nurturing, this is the right man. This is the right brain. And that's, like you said, it just excludes a lot of people.
Yeah, that was a brilliant pivot. I loved that. I sat here and looked like a mini awe. I was like, oh my gosh, that was such a brilliant pivot. But Innes's stated perspective on neurodivergence is that it is not a disability in and of itself, that it is a neurotype. So it's a type of thinking and processing. Yes, it may come with some difficulties, and society may impose difficulty and disability upon it. But in and of itself, it is not a disability. It is a type of thinking and processing. And so when you're talking to companies about how to include the neurodivergent population, how do you go about that?
I tend to organize into common challenges that are common, that are common across a lot of autistics, ADHDers. I often talk a lot about sensory processing issues, because that's something that can feel like an assault on your brain. And that's something that places can make very real, tangible changes. Get rid of those fluorescent lights, allow noise canceling headphones, allow white noise machines. I strongly encourage corporations to let anyone who can work from home, because as someone with a sensory processing disorder, that has been life-changing. I just have so many more spoons at the end of the day, because I can control the temperature and the type of lights. I don't have coworkers who are distracting me when I'm trying to focus, right? I don't hear everybody else's phone ringing and email dinging, things that, again, for neurotypical people, they might not blink. But for me, I'm already trying to filter out the feeling of wearing shoes, the feeling of my pants pushing against my stomach. And so, yeah, the number one thing I recommend is letting people work from home whenever humanly possible, because, yeah, then we don't have to wear shoes, then we can wear more comfortable clothes without these, again, artificial rules about what's professional and what's not. So that's the biggest thing I recommend.
Yeah, I love that. I do have a work from home office. We are experiencing it right now. I didn't feel able to go to my public office today. People who are working with me commonly know that back in March, I suffered a traumatic brain injury, and I have days where I can't drive. And today was one of those days. I did not feel able to drive. And so I have a really nice background. And for whatever reason, it's not where I put it today. I don't know why it's not where I put it, but it's not. I have object permanence, object constancy struggles. So when things aren't where I put it, I panic. Like if I look in my purse for my keys, so it means I put things in very specific places because I need to not panic, right? So I try to be organized. But I have some executive function challenges, which means I need to be organized, but I'm not always organized, right? So things that I have to know where they have a place.
Yes.
So if they're not in that place, it's a moment, right? So I thought I should know exactly where this background is. I have one for wintertime and one for the rest of the year. I found the wintertime one. I did not find my this time of year one. And I don't know why. So I had to shake that off. And my executive assistant, which I just started on Monday, because I had to realize, okay, with the TBI stuff is not getting better. And there are things I can't do. I'm just having to own this new level of disability. So I had to hire an executive assistant, and she was great. She's like, okay, you have sheets in your home closet, pull out a sheet, put it up behind you. And this is a struggle for me. This is not something I felt like I wanted to do because it's got wrinkles and so my need to have everything very straight and smooth and look very professional, that I had to settle that in my brain. And you and I got online together, and I was like, ah! all of my things are going off, right? And if you go into the office and you couldn't find your keys and the train was late and the thing, right? You get into the office and people's emails are dinging and the fluorescent lights and the right.
Yes, exactly.
And then you have to go to a meeting and maybe you snap at somebody and then you're getting taken aside until being told you're inappropriate, or right? If people can understand ahead of time that maybe there are some things that that could help. Maybe if there was a quiet room at work, if you've had all of those things happen before you get to work, and you could go and be a place that had a door you could close, didn't have all the noise, you could breathe for a minute, right?
And that's what I recommend to people for whom there's not an option to work from home. When I taught, I was actually in an open classroom. So we had 4 classrooms of second graders all in one big room, no walls between us. And the teacher's lounge, we always left the lights off. And for 30 minutes, no one would talk, and we would sit in the dark and eat and just recover. And so I tell people, make that space available. Yeah, we can't all work from home, but if it is necessary to be there in person, make a safe space where people can recover.
The other thing that I've learned from putting together INIS 2022, there are interior design architects who are now specializing in sensory positive design.
Oh, I love that.
One of the people who is doing a recorded thing like this, Star, her name is Sonia, and she's from Australia. And she and her team do sensory positive environments for workspaces. And so instead of thinking of sensory as, okay, we have to accommodate the people who have hard
Yes.
times, we think everybody probably has an optimum environment, but maybe not the same environment all day long. So she was explaining to me one office space where they did like 4 different workspaces. They did like a like
Yes, yes.
like right, because like sometimes I go to coffee shops because there's some energy there, and yeah, there are extra noises, but it's a particular vibe.
Yes.
It's not really a club, right? It's not like gonna
Right.
send me home with a migraine. But it's enough energy that I feel energized and I can stay awake and I can write. It's a really good writing atmosphere for me. But then I need to like go be sensorily deprived, right?
Yes.
I can't do that all day. I can do that for like 2 hours and then I'm done.
Yes.
So like their workspace has like the coffee shop vibe and the sensory deprivation vibe. And they have like 4 different vibes where people can work and they can pick up their stuff and they can go because their workspace is on wheels.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
They just take it with them, right? They don't have to unplug. They don't have to, right? Like, even the laptop is like a pain in the, right? You gotta,
Right.
it's like,
All the
it's too,
cords and then the
and
separate
sometimes that in
mouse.
itself, for us neurodivergent people, like just the unplugging and the putting it in the bag and just the 3 extra steps to move locations can be like, no,
Right,
I'm not
exactly.
doing it, right? If all I have to do is stand up and wheel, I might change locations, right?
I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, and what a nice way to communicate when you do and don't want to talk. You know, if you have a silent room, you can go there when you're like, I need to focus. But like you said, our brains need different things. Sometimes I'm the same way. I need people to chat with me. I live in a commune, so I'm lucky that I have those choices. So yeah, I'll sit in the common area if I want to hear, the kids singing and bop to their music, or if that's what I need. But then yeah, there's other times where I need to be alone in my room, in the dark. And then, yeah, I can choose. And I'd love for people to be able to do that in workplaces. Now is the time when my brain's going to work best with external input. Because I tell people, I'm like, oh no, don't feel like you have to be quiet because I'm working in the communal area. The quiet is too loud. I can't stand the silence. I need stuff happening to focus. And the times when my brain needs nothing happening to focus, I go to a different room. So yeah, I hadn't heard about people designing for that, but I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I got so excited. I mean, I get really happy over everybody. That's sort of
Yay.
my personality type. I'm just like, oh, you're doing a thing? I am now extremely happy. Like, I
Yes.
swear every one of these videos starts with me like chipmunking, right? Like, I'm just like, and now we get to talk to, right? Like, just,
Well, as
that's me.
autistics, we love when people like want to talk with us about our special interests. I think some people
Exactly.
think, oh, wouldn't you get bored giving the same presentation over and over? Like, no, I love this. People want to listen. I understand it's not socially acceptable to just have my friends listen to presentations. Like, you know, I want to make it fair, but all these people coming to listen to me talk about my special interest, I'll do that any day of the week. And I do feel like that's one of our strengths as autistics. Like you said, it's about diversity. Um, that's I feel like we can learn, and a lot of ADHDers as well, learn really quickly and retain a great deal when it's something that interests us. It is very difficult when it's not something that interests us, but
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I had a mini conversation on Twitter. I left it fairly quickly because I I don't believe it's my job to to try to unset an already set mind. If somebody's inviting me into conversation, I'll have a conversation. But if somebody is making a statement, it's not an invitation to conversation. So I may make an invitation back for conversation, and if it's not, so I left quickly. So this little mini exchange about how to teach people who are teachable in high interest, right? Not very teachable out of high interest.
Yes.
And, somebody chimed into that broader conversation with, well, sometimes you just have to learn stuff you're not interested in. Well, it's hard to argue with that, right? That's not an illegitimate point. But coming from a background of alternative education, that's what I studied in school. And it's been my focal point throughout my career. It's why I went into coaching and I left regular education, is because even to this day, even though education is aware of different learning modalities, they're not really there yet. So I went into coaching so that I could help people learn how they learn, and then embrace that and move forward. To be able to learn things you're not that interested in, you have to find a way to be interested. Right.
At least see the purpose, right? Like,
right.
I don't enjoy doing taxes, but I understand that that's part of my business, and so I do it. Yeah, we're not saying like, oh, I'm only ever going to eat chocolate and things I like and do things I like. We're saying like, yeah, we can find a way to make it interesting, or we can understand the purpose.
Yeah. But there are autistic people that may get their brain may get wired for only eating chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to find a side or back door to their brain where their brain can accept something in addition.
Yes.
And so, there wasn't room for that conversation, but to just sort of placidly accept, well, sometimes you have to do what you don't want to. I'm not in that camp. I actually want to find a way to want to do everything I have to do. And I want to work at it until I find the way to want to do everything I have to do. Because when I don't want to, that's when I start to lean toward shutting down or melting down. When I can't make my brain happy, my brain starts trying to protect me from my activities.
Yes.
And if I push my brain will double down on protecting me. And the more my brain is trying to protect me from my own behavior, the more my brain misunderstands the source of its trauma. And the more my brain might turn against me. Right? My most severe meltdown is one of these, right? I will hit myself in the head. That's when my brain has misunderstood the source of the danger. It thinks I'm the source of the danger, and it's fighting the danger, right? Looks like self-harm. Technically it is. It's my brain trying to protect me. It's doing its job. It's just mistaking where the source of the danger is, right?
Yes.
So it's turning against the danger. It's doing its job. It's just wrong, right? So for me to be really successful and to not cross over into shut down or meltdown, I need to make sure my brain isn't associating danger with my activities. So it's really important that I find purpose or pleasure. It's really important so that my brain understands something good is about to happen.
Yes.
And we need to help folks understand that's what we're doing. We're helping our primitive mind not protect us from things we need to do.
Yes.
And not dismiss us. Oh, give me a break.
Right.
You're too sensitive. You're too, right? I'm past my eyeballs in that. you're too much, you're too dramatic, you're too whatever, right? Like, no, I understand how my brain works. And I am going to do my utmost best to use the tools I have in the most beautiful, productive ways. And that means I'm going to help my brain know washing the dishes is a beneficial thing, not a dangerous thing. You don't need to protect me from washing the dishes. You
Right.
don't need to protect me from folding the laundry. You don't need to protect me from going to work. Because when I feel disincentivized, that's my brain protecting me. It's my brain doing its job, but it's misinterpreting the event. So I need to help it interpret the event correctly. And if
I
I can
think,
get work, go ahead, go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say, I think you and I need to make our dream school together. I taught at an alternative preschool, and that's honestly one of my dreams, is to have like an alternative multi-age school, because exactly, I did, we were very interest led. So I had a list of things, obviously, that I wanted my students to know before they went to kindergarten, identify letters, count, but we just followed the kids' interests and incorporated the for their future success into that. So at one point, the kids were interested in elevators. We learned all about pulleys. We found songs about elevators. But I was also still able to, you want to count? Let's count elevators. Let's count floors that the elevator goes up and down. Let's watch it go up, let's add and subtract. Yeah, and when you were saying that, I was like, oh yes, you can be with me and make that dream school that I have in my mind, where we have basics, yes, that need to be taught, but we follow the kids' interests. And yeah, I mean, I think they were into some specific TV show. Well, guess what? I can put Dora the Explorer on my alphabet cards, and we can say D is for Dora, S is for Swiper, right? We're still meeting these basic needs for success, and yeah, we're following and respecting their interests, not saying, oh, what you are interested in doesn't matter. Like, no, it does matter, because you matter, right?
Which feels completely normal and right and relevant for the 3 to 6-year-old.
Yes, this is
For
true. This is very
whatever
true.
reason, we get to the 8-year-old and older, and we decide the interest, the love of something, the hyper focus into something is now wrong and irrelevant
Yes.
and not respectful of form and tradition and all of those things. And we take the joy out of
Yes,
everything.
exactly.
We create testing and grades and all of these things that disincentivize learning. And then we go into work and we artificially create scenarios where people's skills are rarely put to the best use.
Right.
There's another individual who's involved in the conference, Andrew Eddy, and one of the brilliant things that he and one of his groups has done is create blind hiring software where the company will first off, it's gamified software. The company's employees will play these games and you'll get an idea of the intellectual and emotional capacities you already have on board. And then you can decide if you would like to create more of that or add to it in new ways, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so your applicants, you don't know their names, their faces, their CVs, you don't know any of that stuff. But your applicants play those games and you learn about your applicants through their intellectual and emotional capacities and capabilities. And you talk to people who match the desires you have for the growth in your company, right? You're
I love it.
either amplifying or augmenting what you already have, right? That doesn't just help neurodivergent people, it helps
Mhm.
BIPOC, it helps everybody, right?
Yes.
The at minimum, the initial blind entry to application creates so much space for for people's abilities to shine. Because there are very few jobs where the ability to create a resume and a cover letter and an interview are actually what you're being hired to do.
Right.
But they're what you're judged on in order to get hired.
And I've heard people who are especially interested in helping more BIPOC people get hired talk about, okay, don't say you're looking for a cultural fit, because guess what? If you have all older white middle-class men, who's going to be the cultural fit out of your interview candidates? Look for cultural growth. Look for people who are going to bring new perspectives, who's going to challenge you to grow, rather than just, oh, we want one more of what we already have. I've seen a lot recently about making the interview process more friendly to neurodiverse people. And I love that. When I read some of the suggestions, I was like, oh, this just makes it so much more fair, right? Some of us don't think well off the top of our head. If one of the suggestions they give all the interview questions ahead of time. If I have them ahead of time, I can type, and I think better typing, and I can write something eloquent, and I can, include all of the relevant things from my experience. Because of the way my brain works, if you ask me that in an interview setting and it's not a question I've anticipated, I'm going to draw a blank. I'm not going to come across as professional. I'm not going to have the chance to share all my relevant experiences. And so, yeah, I love that. I love that we're trying to level the playing field, especially for people who are neurodiverse. But yeah, and like you said, it really ends up helping everyone.
Yeah. My biggest challenge in an interview is that I'm very sincere. Like, I'm really sincere. And I think it's very strange. Right? Like, and I'm not phony or fake, but like, it's like my chipmunk, right? Like, I'm like, I really want this job, right? I'm that autistic person, right? Like, if I really like something, I really like it. And who wants anything that much? I do, right? Like,
See,
and I don't know what the right level of pullback is on that, right? So because I don't really know what their expectation of interest, excitement, involvement is, I don't know where to set my volume, right? I don't know, like, I don't know where to put my, like, if you had a soundboard that was me, I don't know where to put my levels, right? So I try to like gauge from them. And if I get nervous, all my levels start to get pushed up, right? So like, I can feel like I'm doing well, and then they have like a facial expression or a body thing that makes me nervous, and my levels start getting pushed. And I can see that it's going badly, but I can't pull it back. Right? It's just like, it just keeps getting pushed further. And then I'm like, well, that's too bad, right? So if people understood, and it's one of the things I do in my work, I do consultancy work as well, like you do, right? And I tell people, if you know what you're seeing ahead of time, you can help somebody be calm, right? Like, you're okay, everything's fine, right? Like we're just having a conversation, you're good, right? Help somebody relax, notice little body languages. I realized that my anxiety masking had become so intense that my what do you call it?
Stims?
Thank you. That was my stim. I had masked so severely that my highest anxiety had become this. And because people were unaware, they couldn't see. So like therapists, doctors, stuff like that.
Yep.
Didn't know that this was extreme anxiety.
Right.
Right? And so part of what I try to teach people today is to be aware of the tiniest anxiety triggers, cues, cues, right? Little.
Yes.
little things that indicate somebody's brain is starting to walk away from them, right? Their brain is deciding that the present moment is now dangerous, and they're trying to leave with the body attached, right?
Yes.
The body won't leave, the brain is leaving without them.
Right.
The tiniest little things. And if you're aware, you can help the brain come back, calm down, re-engage, and be okay,
Well,
right?
and
But you have to be aware.
that's one of the things that they recommend for neurodiverse friendly hiring practices is not, the sensory stuff, obviously, not the fluorescent lights, not the noisy place, but also let people know what to expect. And am I going to be sitting there with 5 people staring at me who I've never met, or is it going to be people? I don't think people realize how much anxieties and stress build up in us. If I have trouble finding a place to park for the interview, and then I have trouble finding the door, and then I can't, I'm already ramping up, and then you add to that now someone, something that your livelihood depends on, and someone is expecting you to form clear answers and ignore the lights and the noise and the fact that you're kind of shaken from not being able to find it and worrying about being late. So I really appreciated that. I was like, yes, I want to know who's interviewing me, but also, yeah, how many people? I want to know, I want it to be really easy to get there. I want time to relax after I get there and get used to like, okay, I'm in this room. There's cinder blocks. Okay, this is the space. Like, and again, I don't think people realize how hard our brains have to work because things that seem little to them just feel so big to us, and it just builds up.
So one of the things that I've come into contact with for myself when explaining my own needs and in helping people understand how they can notice or accommodate needs, things like that, is people sort of hitting a brick wall. If you have all of these challenges and all of these needs, how are you going to even be able to do a job, right? Because it all sounds so hard, and let's be real, sometimes it's really hard, right?
Yes.
How do you balance letting potential employers of the neurodivergent community know about all of this stuff without scaring them away from hiring us?
I think that's why we have to emphasize the many incredible gifts that seem to come as part of the autistic package. Some of the most skilled, brilliant engineers I know struggle in social situations, and are people who have been diagnosed as autistic, which, as we know, is not always easy to get done, even even when you are autistic. And so I think we just have to focus on, the really big strengths that we bring, rather than just, oh, this is someone who is going to struggle with ABC. I think we need to focus on how can you make the environment conducive so that this person's superpowers can come through, their intelligence, their problem solving, their creativity, their enthusiasm. I think we just need to frame it like that. And I love what you were saying before about accommodations helping everyone, and making buildings specifically to be more accommodating. We've made it wheelchair ramps, right? We should have bathrooms that are big enough to get your wheelchair in. I think these things, additional things like sensory issues, need to just become standard. Okay, let's no cologne or perfume in the office. No fluorescent lights in the office or put covers on them. Like, just, again, more things that that is just become standard, not like, oh, well, we don't have any employees with a wheelchair, we're not going to have a ramp. Like, no, that's not what you do, right? Because someone's going to come for an interview, and if they can't even get into your building, you're already discriminating against them. So I think we need to build, not just look after the fact. And honestly, that's something we talk about in instructional design accessibility. You don't make your course and then say, okay, now I'm going to add captions and add the accessibility sprinkles and do the checklist. No, when you're at the beginning building the course, you're thinking about accessibility. How are users who need to use a foot mouse going to be able to access this? How are users who are blind or vision impaired going to see, access the information on our infographics? It really needs to be in the architecture rather than an afterthought.
Yeah, thank you for saying all of that. It was really beautifully said, for one thing. I think part of what is hard is the way we're educated from our earliest moments on, is that there are certain ways we do things.
Yes.
And we hear it in just about every organization that meets up against a moment to change. We've always done it this way.
Yes.
Right? And so change is hard for all of us. I mean, my goodness, some of us melt down if something changes, right? So we can be gracious about the fact that change is hard. Change is hard. Thinking about doing things differently is hard. I've had a really wonderful experience. My first book, I printed specifically for the neurodivergent community, sensory issues and dyslexia in mind. So the binding is a lay flat binding.
Oh, I love it.
The pages are gray. The type is larger. There's
They're not
space around the type.
overstimulating. Oh, I wish all books looked like this. Oh, no,
So
that
I
makes
hand this, and everything feels okay. All of it feels okay. The pages are a little bit thicker, so they're easy to grab and turn.
Nice.
Right? So is it perfect for everyone? No. But it eliminates a lot of the things that keep people from reading. And what a lot of folks don't realize is that it's not that they don't like to read, it's that they don't like the medium.
Right.
And so one of the things that has been a really beautiful experience is people pick up my book and open my book, and you can watch them relax in every way. They smile and relax, like just what happened to you, right? You smiled and your eyes got big, like, right. And so even somebody who I gave my book to because I wanted them to experience it, right? Even if they didn't read it, I said, "What did you think?" And they're like, "I don't know. It doesn't look like a real book." I said, "Okay, what did it look like to you?" Looked like some kind of like technical manual. And I said, "Okay, why did you think so?" And like, "I don't like the binding." And I said, "Well, that binding was very specific. When I did my research about what keeps the neurodivergent population from interacting with a book, they said the binding, if the binding breaks when you open it, right? If you get that crease in the binding, or if the book won't lay flat, that makes it hard for them to want to interact with the book." And I thought a wire spiral would be better. And I had all kinds of people write back to me and say, no, because of how the pages can fall out of the wire binding. They give me all these different reasons, no wire binding. So I was mistaken on that. So I put the plastic comb binding because the comb overlaps itself. You're much less likely to have pages come loose, get things caught on them. There were all these reasons that I didn't. Okay. And I had to make sure that it was cut specifically, because if it's not cut right, the plastic ends are sharp.
Yes.
So there was so much thinking I had to put into all of the different elements of this book so that people could interact with it without sensory challenges or concern about the book. And so when I explained the lay flat binding to this person, they said, "Yeah, the very first thing I did with your book was lay it flat on my counter. You're right. Never mind. I love your book."
Well, and I think that just goes back to, like you said, all these rules that don't have any purpose. Like, why a Kindle doesn't look like a book? We can still read it. Like, why does a book have to have a specific kind of of binding. Yeah, why do we have to wear specific clothes if that's going to work, if that's going to cause sensory issues for people? We just, yeah, we need to never accept, oh, that we do that because that's the way it's always been done. No, that's not how we make progress. It's just not.
Yeah. But every bit of change always comes with the, no, it's horrible, it's going to ruin everything, and some kind of crazy conspiracy theory, right? When ebooks first came out, all paper books were going to die, right? It was awful. Ebooks were evil, and now most people have an iPad or a Kindle or something, right? Every change requires a bit of patience and grace. And so, though we need to adamantly, daily, sometimes exhaustedly advocate for the changes we need to see,
Yes.
we do need to ask of ourselves patience and grace for those who need to change with us.
Yes.
Because if we batter and brutalize those who need to change, we will create resistance to it.
Yes, exactly.
And that is a really hard thing. You know, before you and I started recording, we were having a conversation about access to care for autistic people.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a space where I have one of my tallest soapboxes. It is an advocacy space that I'm very, very passionate about. And I have a lot of personal experience and trauma in. So it is hard for me to be patient. It is hard for me to be gracious because I have been brutalized in that space. But if I turn that trauma and anger and frustration and sadness outward, I won't make progress in my advocacy.
Yes.
I can be passionate. I can be loud. I can even express some of my anger and disappointment, but I have to be very careful how I do it.
Yes.
Because if I make it personal and I make it blamey,
yes,
I will create resistance to my message. And I think in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, our messages have to be not minimized, no way, not placating or overly careful. Please understand, we need to be bold. We need to be asking for all of our things. But we do have to understand that every new idea has its resistance,
yes,
small buy-in, and then every building has a wheelchair ramp, right? Like
yeah,
when I was a kid, I'm old enough to remember the fight over wheelchair ramps, right? It's just such a tiny portion of the population. When it's every building have to have a wheelchair ramp, right? We need a grandfather clause. We need, right? Like all of this resistance to something that now we just take for granted and we understand, right? This is a process, but we do need to be out there daily with this message as much as we can. We do need to be brave in our identity. Hi, I'm an autistic person and I work for you. And I need some things. What is the best way that I can have what I need and others can too, right? That inclusivity.
oh, go ahead. I face
Nope.
that a lot with doing training to help people not be homophobic or transphobic. Like you said, you can't be like, that's homophobic, that's transphobic, you're bad, you're outdated, I find if I take the approach of, hey, you're obviously a really kind person who cares about the amount of suffering that transgender people are experiencing when they're misgendered day in, day out. I've had luck with people who went from being actively transphobic with me to saying, oh, I think there's some stuff I didn't understand because I haven't experienced it. And like you said, it's just, if we assume the best in people, hey, you probably didn't realize this, but I really, really struggle with fluorescent lights. Probably never was on your radar. But for me, that's like someone yelling in my ears. And then if there's also really loud music playing in the coffee shop, that's another person yelling in the other ear. And yeah, I think if we build upon people's natural empathy and goodwill and make it clear that we are assuming the best about them, even if sometimes in our head we're like that pushes my buttons, I've seen people talk about, we had talked about the medical community. There have been transgender men who have gone into the emergency room, and because of people's assumptions about seeing someone with a beard, who's on testosterone, they won't get a pregnancy test. Well, anyone in the medical field will tell you that's one of the first things they do before they put you through all those machines and things like that. So I feel like if you just say, hey, you probably hadn't thought about this. I know you would never, ever want to, mistreat someone because they're autistic or this or that. A lot of the time, then people say, yeah, I am a good person. And yeah, I wouldn't want to hurt anyone. And they can be more open to, like, I literally just didn't know that. Literally never occurred to me.
Yeah. A lot of our humor in our society is putting other people down and calling them stupid. A Facebook reel yesterday that I did not finish watching because I'm really repelled by that kind of humor was somebody asking people if they knew that Homo sapiens were an endangered species and if they cared. And a lot of people saying, like, I don't know, I've never heard of a Homo sapien and I don't care if they're, and like, Homo sapien is a term for human being. And these people didn't know that that was the term for human being. And it was just supposed to be this, oh, look at all the stupid people. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a stomach for that.
No,
I don't,
absolutely not.
That's not, I have no joy in, especially without these people's permission. Right now they're out there on the internet. These people are out there on the internet so that everybody can laugh at them and think, oh, what stupid people they are, right? What morons they are. And because autism is thought of as an intellectual deficiency, which it is not, right? But it is thought of that way. We have in our culture humor that degrades autistic people. And so we're taught to think that's funny. We're taught to, and there's a psychology about if you want someone to accept a thing, make it funny, right?
Interesting.
So your point about starting with, who I know you to be is a really kind, good person. And so I know that you wouldn't want harm to come to somebody. I know that you wouldn't want them to feel badly. I know that you would want good things for them. You remind them of who they are. Yeah, yes. You're right. Who I am is this person. Because when we are tapped into our cultural training, we are forgetting ourselves.
Yes.
And so your approach is, to me, a really wonderful one because it reminds ourselves of ourselves. It doesn't tell anybody you're supposed to be like this. It doesn't tell us we are wrong in who we are. It reminds us of who we are. Right. I know who I am. I am choosing my identity. I am choosing to be who I know myself to be. And who I know myself to be would like to be interested in who you are.
And I think as humans, we all need to work more on not just saying, oh, I've never experienced that, so it can't be true. We're sitting in the same room and the lights aren't bothering me, so there must be something wrong with you, not just you experience things differently. I talk with people about that a lot with non-binary genders. They're like, well, I have a penis and I've always felt like a man. And I've never felt like a woman. I've never felt like anything else. Like that's 100% valid. And just like with the fluorescent lights, that doesn't mean that it's not valid that I feel non-binary, that so many people, who are transgender feel like whatever body parts they were born with don't match with their identity. Doesn't make it, that's not any less real than someone else not struggling with the loud music in the coffee shop and me having to use all my spoons to function and concentrate on the concentration despite the music. I think we just need to teach everyone, like, hey, just because you don't experience something doesn't mean it's not true. It means you haven't experienced it. It means your brain might be wired differently.
Yeah. I've had some success using colors, especially red and orange. Red and orange are colors that people often see, like if you say, is this red or orange? And you have 5 people, you might get three people say red, 2 people say orange, or vice versa. So people can understand the red and orange conundrum.
I love that.
And so that's a thing where they can agree, yeah, some people see red, some people see orange. And so, yeah, so in the same way, some people are bothered by fluorescent lights and some people aren't. It's the way our brains process things. So when you have a red thing and some people see it as orange, their brains are picking up more of the yellows in that red thing. It's not a pure red, it's a combination of colors. And their brains are picking up more of the yellows, so they're seeing something that's more orange, right? When we look at a flower and a bumblebee looks at a flower, we see entirely different colors because our brains are processing the colors, the light bouncing off of it differently. We get that. We don't expect the bumblebee to see what we see because we know our brains are processing differently, right? So colors are a thing that we understand our brains process differently. There are colorblind people, right? So it's an experience that people will have had, possibly in their own home, right?
Yes.
My kids, my first husband, my kid's father, was somebody who saw more yellows in reds than the rest of the family did. And so we had red cups at home and he saw orange cups. And we would try to show him something very orange next to the red cup. And he would look at them and he would know there was a difference between them, but he still didn't see red. He still saw orange. So his brain processed yellow more predominantly than red, right? Unfortunately, because of the way we're raised, wrong equals humorous, diminishing, dehumanizing. So at that time, we were kind of picking on him about it. That wasn't okay. We should have understood, oh, that's a different brain wiring. That's interesting for you. And we could have started talking to him differently. If we wanted that particular red cup, we could have, we could have decided when we say red cup, this is the one we mean.
Right.
So that he could have known. Or we could have decided for dad, those are the orange cups.
Yeah.
We could have accommodated him. But we didn't know back then any of our neurodivergence. We didn't know our identity back then. And we didn't have that information. What we had was our cultural training. So instead of helping him and accepting him and accommodating him, we picked on him. That wasn't okay. But that is our culture, and that is what most people are coming to the table with when we're having these conversations. And so if we can find a place where we can use an experience they might have already had, then they might be able to go, oh, so it's kind of like that, right?
I like to use the example of, some people are able, their jobs are like smelling perfumes or, looking at paint colors, like you said, to get that exact flavoring that's used for Uncle Matt's juice, right? Like that's actually just an artificial flavor. Or that exact scent that is labeled as this perfume. Someone like me, I could probably smell a number of things that all smell the same to me, but there are people with that ability who can be like, no, this is different. And they are the ones who are the quality control for that uniform taste or uniform smell we connect. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. Like, oh, well, I can't tell the difference, so there is no difference. No, it means My brain's different. My brain can't differentiate between these two shades or these two scents. Yours can. Yeah, there doesn't,
Absolutely.
some things in life, there is an objective truth, right and wrong. And some things, yeah, our brains literally are seeing and experiencing different things. And nobody's right or
Absolutely.
wrong. It's just we have to trust other people when they share experiences that are different than ours.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when we can start helping people understand that, we can start helping people understand that autism and ADHD are neurotypes. They are different ways of
Yes.
taking in information, processing it, and returning it to the world. And they are really beautiful and unique ways.
Yes.
I had a fantastic experience a couple of months ago. I got so excited. I'm also dyslexic and dyscalculic, and I learned that one of the gifts of dyslexia is kind of like 3D mapping in your mind.
Interesting.
And so I've been frustrated my whole life because I love drawing, but I have been I've been frustrated by drawing. So like if you put this on the table and make it opaque, I didn't grab an opaque thing, but
Right.
if you make it opaque, my brain makes the sides and the back.
Interesting.
To draw it, I only need what I can see. But because my brain makes the sides and the back, I have a really hard time drawing only what I can see, because what I can see is what's in my head. So my art teachers would come around and I'd be sitting there with my pencil, like stuck. And they're like, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "I can't figure out how to draw the sides and the back." Like, "Well, you don't. You just draw the front." Like, "But the sides and the back." Like, you just,
Right.
but I was brilliant. If they would give me like a picture out of a magazine or a book, I could copy it almost exactly. I was a
Wow.
great copyist because autism, detail, right? I
Yes.
saw it all and I could recreate it. But something that was externally 3D, my brain couldn't release the 3D mapping of it. And so I couldn't, and I had to literally do like things in my brain to break everything into just lines. It had to become just lines. I just stopped thinking of it as a thing. Like if you put an apple on a table, it couldn't be an apple anymore. It had to be just lines. And I had to make the table lines and the background lines, and I had to see where the lines met everything. And it became very interesting, but it was so much work. It was exhausting, and it wasn't a process I enjoyed.
Right.
And so when I learned that dyslexic have this power to mentally create what might be on the sides and behind when they can't see it, and ways that people are putting that to work, and how that makes them really good, like civic engineers and product engineers and stuff like that, because they can mentally create the three-dimensional.
Yes.
I didn't know that everybody couldn't do that. I didn't know that that was like a thing that I could do that maybe somebody else couldn't do, right? I got so happy because it explained why I couldn't draw,
I like
right?
it.
So like I thought, and that's part of why I say we have to make sure we're not looking at something as a disability, right? Yes, my 3D mapping makes it difficult for me to draw two-dimensionally unless I'm looking at a two-dimensional thing, what my brain can process as a two-dimensional thing. So train my 3D thinking to do 3D things, right? Just train my brain to do what it's designed to do. And then I'm not disabled. I'm
Right.
very abled, right? And so when you're talking about going into work, like you said, yeah, I may struggle with lights and sound and stuff like that, but could you please let me do a job that I might be really freaking good at?
Yes.
And then you will love having me in your company, and I'll be loyal, and I'll be like, if I'm only autistic, I'll be very on time. If I'm autistic and ADHD, can I please be there 10 minutes late? Accommodate me a little bit. Like, I may need a little accommodation, but I'm going to be like amazing. I'm going to be amazing if you let me do the things I'm good at. Please let me do the things I'm good at. Find out what I'm good at. And maybe find out what the rest of your employees are good at. And maybe start designing your company so that the people you have working for you are doing the things that they're good at.
Yes.
And then maybe your company is going to start being amazing. I work with clients all the time, and part of what is challenging for them is that they're not doing jobs that they're good at.
That's a shame.
And it doesn't really matter if they're ADHD, autistic, or whatever, is that their company doesn't really understand how to use their skills. And so again, back to what can we do so that everybody is benefited, right? If you're going to help an autistic or ADHD people do things that they're actually good at, take a step back. Are you using your employees in ways that are actually good for them and good for the company?
I like the classic cartoon that has like a fish, a kangaroo, and a monkey or something, and then it says, okay, intelligence means jumping high. So we're only going to test how high you can jump, and that's going to be whether you're valuable or not. Well, yeah, then obviously the kangaroo wins, but let's say we put everybody in water and then we just decide, no, whoever can swim the fast, that's what we value the most. Well, then the fish is going to win, right? Like we need to give our fish water and our kangaroos dry land.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Love it, love it, love it.